I knew I was in trouble the moment the scanner at the employee entrance blinked red. It was such a small thing, a flash of red instead of green, but in that sterile, quiet moment, it might as well have been a gunshot. 8:10 a.m. 10 minutes late. The first time in over 3 years. I swiped my badge again. Still red. One more time, because hope dies last, but nothing changed. Behind me, the hall was already clearing out, footsteps echoing like warnings. I stood still for a moment, gripping the strap of my laptop bag a little tighter. Then I saw Alex from accounting pass by, with that look you never want to see on a colleague's face. Half sympathy, half, you should have seen it coming. You might want to go to the front lobby, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. He's waiting. I didn't need to ask who he was. Craig Dennison, the company's chief operating officer. My direct supervisor. A man who measured time in seconds and respect in silence. If he was waiting for me, it meant he'd been watching the clock tick since 8:01. I should have felt nervous, but I didn't. Not really. Just a strange, hollow ache in my chest. The kind of ache you feel when something you've built with your blood and bones is about to be taken away, and there's not a damn thing you could do to stop it. My name is Nathan Hale. I'm 40 years old, a single father to a 7-year-old boy named Jack. For the past 3 years, I've been the senior operations manager at Stratagem Logistics, a fast-paced supply chain firm headquartered in Austin. I've worked 70-hour weeks, pulled all-nighters more times than I can count, and sacrificed birthdays, holidays, and everything in between to hold that company together. But that morning, none of it mattered. That morning, I was just a man who walked through the door 10 minutes late. Because Jack had a fever. Because he cried through the night. Because I was up cooling his forehead and whispering that everything was going to be okay. Because I'm not just a manager. I'm a father. And I made a choice. One that Craig clearly didn't think much of. When I stepped into the lobby, he didn't even wait for me to speak. Just turned toward the conference room and said, "Now." His tone was clipped, public. There were others around, junior analysts, receptionists, each pretending not to look. But they saw. They all saw. I followed him in silence, the sound of his shoes sharp against the tile. He didn't ask how Jack was. Didn't even offer me a seat. He just stood by the window, arms crossed, eyes cold. "You were 10 minutes late." It wasn't a question. It wasn't even an accusation. Just a statement, clinical and final. I told him the truth. That my son was sick. That I hadn't slept. That I got there as quickly as I could. But he didn't blink. Didn't respond. Just pulled a small black device from his pocket and pointed it at my badge. Click. The red light blinked again, this time with finality. "Your access has been deactivated," he said. "Security will escort you to your desk." There was no anger in his voice. No emotion at all. Just the mechanical coldness of someone who saw people as cogs and believed every cog was replaceable. I didn't argue. Didn't plead. I just nodded. What could I say? I'd given 3 years of my life to that company. Stayed through crises, led emergency logistics rollouts, rebuilt broken supply chains on nothing but caffeine and grit. I was the guy who showed up when no one else would. The guy who got things back on track. And now, I was the guy walking out of the building like a terminated intern. No warning, no dignity, just a blink of red and a security escort. As I packed my things, the silence in the office was deafening. People avoided eye contact, but I could feel them watching. My desk wasn't cluttered, just a framed photo of Jack, 2 notebooks full of operational plans, and a cactus I'd somehow kept alive longer than my time at the company. I carried them out like they were all I had left. Outside, the Texas spring air was cool and sharp. For the first time in months, I had nowhere to be. No fires to put out. No boardrooms to hold together with duct tape and sheer willpower. It felt strange, empty. But as I sat beside Jack on the living room couch, his small body curled up under a blanket, something shifted inside me. He looked up, his cheeks still flushed from the fever. "You're home early," he murmured. I smiled and kissed his head. "Yeah, buddy, I'm home." Then my phone buzzed. A name lit up the screen that I hadn't seen in a while. Eric Jensen, VP of Operations, Meridian Supply Solutions. Subject line, urgent. "Can you talk today?" And in that moment, I realized Craig had made the biggest mistake of his career. He didn't just fire me. He set me free. I didn't open the message right away. It sat there on my phone screen, glowing like a second chance I wasn't ready to look at yet. I stared at it for a while, letting the weight of the morning settle into my bones. Jack had drifted off to sleep again beside me, breathing evenly now. For the first time all day, I let myself exhale. Then, finally, I tapped on the message. Nathan, I heard what happened this morning. I'm sorry. I'd like to speak with you today, if you're available. We've been watching your work closely. It's time we had a conversation. Eric Jensen, VP of Meridian Supply Solutions. We hadn't spoken in over a year, not really. Just occasional nods at logistics expos, a LinkedIn comment here, a polite email there. But I remembered the last time we worked together, how I helped rescue a regional shipping nightmare that threatened to tank a multi-million-dollar contract. Eric had called me the calm in a Category 5 storm. I figured it was just a compliment. I didn't think he actually meant it. Turns out he did. I stood up slowly, walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water. The light outside had shifted, the kind of soft, forgiving light that makes broken things feel less sharp. I ran a hand through my hair, grabbed my phone, and dialed the number. Eric picked up on the first ring. Nathan, he said, his voice clipped but not cold. Is now a good time? It is, I replied, quieter than I intended. I'll get straight to the point. We've been thinking about bringing you in for a while now. You're well known in this industry. Your work at Strategem's East Coast rollout was textbook brilliant. But what happened today? It's pushed us to move faster. I stayed quiet, letting him speak. I'm offering you a position, Director of Strategic Logistics. You'd oversee national systems optimization and lead our regional integration teams. Flexible schedule, remote work options. And we support families here, Nathan. Being a father isn't a liability to us. It's part of who you are. We value that. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not fear, not pride, just emotion, raw and overdue. I turned away from the kitchen window, eyes suddenly burning. It wasn't the job offer itself. It was hearing someone say, plainly and without agenda, that being a parent wasn't a weakness, that it was respected. I appreciate that, I said. Truly, but I need a little time. Today's been a lot. Of course, Eric said without hesitation. We'll give you the space you need. But know this isn't a favor, Nathan. It's not about what happened at Stratagem. We wanted you before all that. We want you even more now. We ended the call politely, and I stood there for a moment, still holding my phone like it might float away. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I sat down at my desk, not to answer emails or fix a broken process or babysit a shipping line, but to write a list. A list of everything I had done at Stratagem that went unnoticed, unthanked, and unappreciated. 16 emergency overnights. 3 major project recoveries. $11.7 million in accounts retained. 0 vacations. 1 child raised solo. The list kept growing. And with it, so did the truth. Craig hadn't fired me because I was late. He fired me because I'd stopped being convenient. Because I had a line I wasn't willing to cross anymore. Because I was no longer afraid to say, my son comes first. And the moment I put that into practice, he saw it as weakness. But what Craig didn't realize was that people had been watching me. They'd seen the hours, the nights, the fixes. They knew who held that company together when everything else was falling apart. I wasn't going to fight him publicly. I wasn't going to launch some dramatic campaign to clear my name. I didn't need to. Because justice doesn't always arrive with sirens. Sometimes it comes quietly, through a phone call from someone who saw the truth. Sometimes it arrives wrapped in opportunity, not vengeance. And when it does, all you have to do is say yes. By Tuesday morning, the ripple had begun. I hadn't said a word publicly. No posts, no explanations, no dramatic farewells. I just vanished, quietly, precisely. Like a cog removed from a machine too arrogant to admit it needed oil. But I could feel it, the shift. The first call came from Thomas, our senior analyst. A solid guy. Smart, sharp, always 2 steps ahead of the data. He called while I was making toast for Jack, who was finally well enough to argue about butter versus jam. I figured you should know, Thomas said without preamble. Craig spinning his story. Said you were chronically late. That you've been warned several times. That you showed insubordination. I stopped spreading jam. He really said that? He did, in front of the entire executive team, HR included. I let the silence hang. Part of me hoped he'd say, but no one believed him. Instead, he sighed. Some looked confused, HR especially. A few execs just nodded along. But the rest of us, we knew. We've seen how many nights you've stayed late, how many weekends you worked. You weren't just punctual. You were the system. The toast burned. I didn't care. Craig wasn't just burying me. He was rewriting the past, trying to erase me like a bad line of code. But the thing about reputations is they're not built in silence. They're built in pressure. And under pressure, people remember who showed up when no one else did. I thanked Thomas, hung up, took Jack to school, and returned home to an inbox that was quietly unraveling. Michelle, our procurement lead, messaged. He's pretending like you were some intern. People are pissed. Then David, a junior developer I mentored last year. Your desk still hasn't been cleared. It's like they don't know what to do without you. And finally, Eric, this time not just him, a calendar invite. Zoom call, 11 a.m. Eric Jensen, Maya Caldwell, Chief People Officer, Leo Matthews, Strategic Ops. 3 heavy hitters. I dressed sharp, clean navy shirt, hair combed back. The kind of preparation I used to reserve for quarterly reviews I wasn't allowed to speak at. This time, I wasn't observing. This time, I was the reason the meeting existed. At exactly 11 a.m., the screen lit up. Eric appeared first, then Maya, then Leo. Nathan, Maya said warmly, "Thank you for taking the time." "I'm grateful for the opportunity," I replied, meaning every word. Eric got right to it. "We'd like to officially offer you the role, Director of Strategic Logistics. Competitive salary. Full autonomy. You'll lead the national rollout for our operations revamp. Flexible hours. Remote first." And Nathan, he paused. "We understand being a father isn't a problem to fix. It's part of who you are. And we want that whole person, not just the title." I froze, just for a second, because in all my years, no one had ever said that to me out loud. That my life outside of work mattered. That it wasn't a liability. That it was a strength. I turned away from the screen, wiping the corner of my eye. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. It means more than you know." Maya smiled. We meant every word. I accepted the offer on the spot. Not out of anger. Not out of some vendetta against Craig. But because I was done proving my worth to people who treated loyalty like a leash. This wasn't revenge. This was alignment. By Thursday morning, Stratagem was starting to feel my absence in ways no HR memo could paper over. It started small, quiet little things. A misrouted shipment in Denver. A delay in Atlanta that no one caught in time. A client in Chicago suddenly growing impatient because the one person who always returned their calls was gone. But by mid-morning, the quiet had turned to murmurs and the murmurs to questions. Michelle called during my lunch break. Her voice was low, urgent. "You won't believe what's going on." I was sitting on my balcony, sun spilling across my table, the scent of fresh coffee in the air. I leaned back in my chair. "Try me." Craig pulled the executive team into an emergency meeting. Said there's misinformation circulating. Asked everyone to refrain from commenting on personnel changes. It was bizarre. Like he's trying to plug holes in a ship that's already sinking. I could picture it. The panic behind his stone face. The way he tried to control chaos by pretending it wasn't real. But chaos doesn't need permission. It doesn't wait for approval. Michelle continued. "There's more." Eric called again. Not just him this time. Meridian's legal team. "Apparently Craig tried to classify your termination as a security issue so he wouldn't have to explain why their favorite project lead vanished overnight." I didn't say a word, because in that silence, I could feel something shifting. Craig wasn't just fumbling. He was falling. Not because I raised my voice, but because I'd walked away quietly and left behind the truth. I was the proof that leadership doesn't live in corner offices or spreadsheets or call logs. It lives in the moments no one tracks. The Sunday emails. The overnight fixes. The sacrifices that don't show up on performance reviews. And now, the people who saw those moments, they were speaking up. Thomas messaged again that afternoon. 3 resignations this morning. Procurement, logistics, and IT. All said the same thing in exit interviews. Nathan was the reason I stayed this long. Craig's door has been closed for hours. That one hit me, right in the center of the chest. Not because I wanted Craig to suffer, but because I never realized just how much weight I'd carried until others finally admitted it out loud. And they weren't done. That evening, I received a message from Heather Chambers, chairwoman of the board. I hadn't heard from her since my first promotion years ago. Nathan, I'd like a few minutes of your time to discuss recent developments at Stratagem. Please call me when you're available. I didn't call her. Not yet. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't owe them urgency anymore. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table with Jack, who was building a tower out of Legos while spaghetti sauce dried on his chin. He looked up and said, "Are you going back to the old job?" I smiled gently. "No, kiddo. I got a new one. Do they know you're my dad?" That one stopped me. "Yeah," I said quietly. "And they think that's one of the best parts about me." He grinned and went back to his tower. And I sat there, stunned by the simplicity of it. All those years I tried to hide how much I was juggling, try to be the perfect employee despite being a parent, when in truth, that was the strength all along. Not the sacrifice, the balance, the humanity, the fact that I didn't quit when I was drowning, that I held it all together even when no one noticed, that I chose to leave with grace instead of rage. That's what real leadership looks like. And now, at Meridian, I wasn't just given a new role. I was given a table to sit at, a voice that mattered, a seat I didn't have to fight for. That week, I ran my first workshop with a new team. Young, curious analysts, hungry to learn. Afterward, a quiet intern named Ava stayed behind and said, "I just wanted to say thank you for making space. Most people in your position don't." I looked at her for a long second, then smiled. "You don't have to choose between being strong and being kind," I said. That's something I learned the hard way. Friday morning arrived like a breath of clarity. While the office I used to call home scrambled behind half-shut doors, I buttoned my blazer with a calm I hadn't felt in years. Jack was sitting at the kitchen table eating cereal, humming to himself. His fever was gone. His laughter was back. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't have to choose between father and professional. I was both, standing tall in both roles. The day moved swiftly. Meetings, briefings, strategy sessions. Every hour spent at Meridian reinforced what I already knew. I belonged here. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was building. Then, just after lunch, Eric pulled me aside. He wasn't smiling this time, just quiet, measured. "We've officially ended Stratagem's vendor agreement," he said. "Our legal team sent the paperwork this morning." I blinked, not in disbelief, but in awe at the sheer symmetry of it. Craig had fired me thinking I was disposable. Now I was the one coordinating their offboarding. It was quiet. No headlines. No public drama. Just a signed document and a shift in power. Poetic justice, maybe, but I didn't gloat. I didn't even smile. I just nodded. I'll handle the transition. Because this wasn't about winning a battle. It was about leaving the war behind. That evening, as the sun dipped beneath the Austin skyline, my phone buzzed again. A voicemail transcript followed almost immediately. "Nathan, this is Heather Chambers. I understand you've accepted a position with Meridian. I respect that, but I'd still appreciate 10 minutes of your time. There are ongoing issues at Stratagem that I believe you should be aware of." There it was. The reckoning. They had begun to understand. Craig hadn't just made a bad call. He'd exposed a rot buried deep beneath a polished brand. One that said loyalty was a one-way street and parenthood was an inconvenience. But I wasn't interested in helping them fix the narrative. Not now. Not when everything they refused to see was playing out exactly as it should. Because you don't rise by clinging to what broke you. You rise by stepping into rooms that recognize your worth the moment you walk in. By Monday, Craig Dennison had been placed on administrative leave. Not because I asked for it. Not because I demanded retribution. But because systems that lean too hard on one good person and then discard them eventually fall under their own weight. Heather called again. This time I answered. She was polite, professional, contrite, in the quiet way powerful people are when they've been caught in the light of something too human to ignore. "We've reviewed the documentation," she said. "There were clear procedural violations, bias, poor judgment. We'd like to offer you reinstatement at Stratagem, executive level." autonomy, a formal apology, a public statement of recognition. I let the silence stretch for a beat longer than necessary. Then I said the one thing I had never allowed myself to say before. No. A pause on the other end. I understand, she said finally. I hope Stratagem learned something from this, I replied. Not just about me, about everyone you overlook. I believe we will. I ended the call softly. No hard edges, no bitterness, just closure. That same afternoon, as I stood at the front of the strategy room at Meridian, delivering a transition roadmap to my new team, I felt something shift, not in the world, but in me. I wasn't afraid of being invisible anymore, because I no longer needed to be seen to know what I was worth. And later that night, as Jack and I sat on the couch watching an old superhero movie, a knock came at the door. No one expected. No signature required. Just a plain brown box with my name scribbled in black ink. Inside was my old desk photo, the one of me and Jack, taken at a fall carnival years ago. Taped to the back was a note on Stratagem stationery. For what it's worth, you were never invisible. We just didn't have your courage. Thank you for showing us how to walk away with our heads high. M. I didn't have to guess who M was. I placed the photo on my new desk, not as a souvenir of loss, but as a monument to survival, to truth, to the quiet kind of strength that doesn't beg for validation, because it already knows who it is. They say revenge is best served cold, but I don't believe that anymore, because the best revenge isn't silence. It's not success. It's not justice. It's becoming the version of yourself you were never allowed to be, and never, ever looking back. If this story spoke to something in you, if you've ever given too much to a place that saw too little in return, don't walk away in anger. Walk away in purpose. And if you've ever been made to feel replaceable, invisible, or less than because you chose to show up for your family, remember this. Your worth is not measured by how small you can make yourself to fit inside someone else's version of success. It's measured by the rooms you walk into without apology and the people you raise, protect, and inspire along the way. If you felt something watching this, share it, leave a comment, and most importantly, never forget, you're not alone. We see you, and your quiet strength changes everything.